Good evening and welcome to the Anchorman podcast powered by One America News. I'm Matt Gaetz, host of the Matt Gaetz Show. We're every weeknight, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We've partnered with ZeroHedge, a great website, for their ZeroHedge debates. ZeroHedge debates bring smart folks together to challenge conventional wisdom and discuss the major policy questions of the day on digital platforms. Tonight, we ask this question: should the U.S. support Israel in taking out Iran's leadership? Taking the affirmative in this debate is Robert Spencer, director of Jihad Watch. Taking the negative is Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem podcast. I'm former Congressman Matt Gaetz. I'll be your moderator. The ZeroHedge debates begin now. Each side is afforded a 4-minute opening statement, and we begin with Robert Spencer.
Thanks, Matt. Obviously nobody wants to go to war with Iran. The problem is, in all of these discussions that I'm seeing about this issue, nobody is actually talking about the fact that not just one side gets to decide whether the war will begin or not. And it may well be that Iran will attack the United States, and it won't be up to anyone whether we go in to fight Iran or not. At the same time, nobody is envisioning the kind of quagmire that we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nobody is talking about boots on the ground. There is talk about regime change, but that's become a very charged term. It doesn't necessarily mean some sort of wrong-headed, misguided, unfocused project to bring a political system to a people that doesn't want it or understand it. And so what we have in this situation is quite different. The president, as a matter of fact, just today said that he was talking to Tucker Carlson, and he said, "Are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran?" And Trump went on to say, and he sort of didn't like that. And of course, nobody really likes that. And Trump said, if that's okay with you, you and I have a difference. It's not just Israel that has said that the Islamic Republic of Iran is working on nuclear weapons. This is something that has been abundantly established by investigations of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is, of course, an arm of the UN, works closely with several UN agencies. And the UN is no friend of Israel. The UN, as a matter of fact, has a standing item. The UN Human Rights Council has item 7 on its agenda every time it meets to condemn alleged human rights abuses of Israel. So the IAEA, working closely with the UN, is not likely to exaggerate an Iranian nuclear threat, but the IAEA says that the Iranians are enriching uranium at a rate that is far beyond peaceful purposes, and that this is indeed an imminent threat. And so I hope that the president doesn't have to strike in Iran. I hope that it doesn't come to that. He's talking today about bringing Iranians to Washington to talk with him at the White House. And he's the great deal maker. Maybe he can do it again. At the same time, it may become, unfortunately, necessary for the real peace of the world to strike Iran's nuclear program in tandem with Israel and to take it out so that this regime cannot endanger the life of the world as it has thus far in numerous ways. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean regime change, but if it did come about, the first people who would welcome it would be the Iranians themselves, who have made it abundantly clear that they hate this regime. In Afghanistan, they love the Taliban. In Iraq, they couldn't wait to get rid of Saddam to establish Sharia. In Iran, it's different.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Spencer. Dave Smith, take it away.
I'm honestly almost just in disbelief almost over this entire debate. I can't even believe that we're here in 2025 after just electing Donald Trump, winning every swing state and the popular vote, that we're actually having 2003 all over again with all of the same characteristics, just blatant lies, complete misrepresentation of the evidence, a bunch of different fabricated justifications for the war that aren't even coherent. The truth is that many people, no one wants war with Iran, are the first words we hear. No one wants war with Iran. You sure about that? Iran has been on America's list of countries to overthrow since at least 2001. We have a 4-star general on the record who told us that he saw these plans. George W. Bush put Iran on the axis of evil after 9/11, even though they had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. He then invaded the 2 countries that touch it and destroyed the 2 countries. And you're going to sit here and say no one desires war in Iran? Is anybody who knows anything about DC knows that there are very powerful forces. Not a single honest Trumper, MAGA person in America would say that there aren't powerful forces that have wanted war with Iran for years. And the fact of the matter is that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. The Director of National Intelligence released her annual threat assessment 2 months ago. She reaffirmed it very recently. There's just no evidence of it. And even as you quote the IAE, they came out and said that Iran is not developing nuclear weapons. They have a latent nuclear deterrent. It was in no way something that justified a first strike from Israel. And the idea that this regime change is going to be different, well, why does it feel so similar already? It's based on a lie of a nuclear threat. We're talking about liberating the people. I mean, I guess maybe one of the differences I spot, Matt, I bet you would find this kind of funny, but the Israelis are posting pictures with the son of the Shah. So I guess we're making the world safe for monarchy now. I guess we're in the business of spreading monarchy to the Middle East. Well, I don't see any indication that that's going to work out any better than spreading democracy worked. And either way, it's not America's business. We have to appreciate, look, as you even mentioned there in your opening, it's like you lay out the argument. Now we don't know what's going to happen. Look, America, the Israelis will sit here and say that Iran attacked them on October 7th because it was their proxy that came and attacked them. Well, by that same logic, is Israel not our proxy? I mean, not that that's exactly the relationship, but we certainly fund and arm them. We're giving them intelligence cover. Evidently, Trump was negotiating to distract them from this attack coming in. And yeah, we don't know now. We have, at least as of 2007, the Pentagon told George W. Bush that we do not have escalation dominance in a war with Iran, meaning they can hit so many of our bases and our embassies in the region. Is a huge risk. And what's going to happen then? You know, it's easy. They all start off, oh, there won't be troops on the ground. It won't be one of the bad regime changes. It'll be a good one. What happens when a few Americans get killed in this? You think Donald Trump's going to take that and not start bombing the hell out of this country? This is so incredibly risky. And just to be clear here, and I'll end on this, I just can't overstate this. When I say this is so incredibly risky, what we're risking is the United States of America. And I don't just mean like because Iran could beat us in a conflict, but honestly, ask yourself, let's say you're wrong. You know, I don't know where you stood on all these last regime change wars, but I know that almost everybody who's trying to sell this one was catastrophically wrong about all the last ones. What's the chance you're wrong here? When I say you're wrong, I mean that regime change doesn't work out well, that actually it becomes a disaster, that actually even though the people didn't like the government, I don't know, this radical government that has ruled since 1979, with all of the most powerful governments... Okay, I'll wrap up real quick. With all of the most powerful governments in the world trying to overthrow them, they've still hung on. Who's to say that another radical group doesn't go out there? And we're not in the position we were in 2003. We're $37 trillion in debt. Our country is completely divided in a way we haven't been before. Donald Trump needs all the political capital he can right now to get his immigration issues through, and that's all. Sorry.
Okay, so Mr. Spencer, I want to pin you down on precisely the position you're taking here. Do you believe that there is a basis right now? In your opening statement, you made a lot of the characterizations about what could happen and predictions about potential developments in the conflict. But right now, do you believe the United States should support Israel in taking out Iran's leadership? And can you give me just a quick answer to that question?
Well, it depends on what you mean by support. You know, in World War II, Franklin Roosevelt did not get the United States involved in the war until after Pearl Harbor, but he did everything he could to help the British before that. There was the Lend-Lease program, there was the propaganda war, there were all kinds of ways in which he was aiding the side of freedom against the Nazis before Pearl Harbor, but he didn't get involved until Pearl Harbor. I think that's a perfectly
So is that where
workable
you think the U.S. should be today? I
right
just want
now.
to understand that for clarity, the sake of your position. Are you saying we should be in a lend, lease, provide weapons to Israel, or do you believe the United States should directly be involved in striking assets in Iran?
Exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
The idea that this is some sort of betrayal of MAGA, as Dave was suggesting, is ignorant of the fact that Trump, in his escalator speech, his first political speech, announcing he was going to run for president in 2015, he says, "I'm not going to allow Iran to get nuclear weapons." Now, I don't know what people thought he meant by that. He reiterated that many times over the years, and now he's saying the same thing. And you've got a regime that actually has ordered its people every Friday in the mosques all over Iran. They have to chant "Death to America" as well as "Death to Israel." And it's important to note this is not just braggadocio or sloganeering. The Ayatollah Khamenei actually said not long ago that the situation between America and Iran is this. This is November 1st, 2023. When you chant "Death to America," it is not just a slogan, it's a policy. And it's a long-standing policy, in fact, because it goes back to 1979, to the seizure of the embassy, the taking of the hostages, the taking of the CIA agent William F. Buckley, not the National Review guy, another one, who
Another
was
CIA agent.
Yeah, well, you probably got a point there. But in any case, he was brutally tortured and murdered by the Iranian regime in the 80s. Hezbollah is a wholly owned and operated subsidiary of the Islamic Republic of Iran, created by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. 1983, they killed 241 Marines in the barracks in Beirut. You've got just a couple of years ago, Tom Cotton asked Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, has Iran attacked any American interests, American bases in the last couple of years? And if so, how many times? And Austin says 83 times. And Cotton says, okay, how many times did the U.S. respond? And he said 4. So that's 79 unanswered attacks from a power that is chanting "Death to America," saying it's a policy, not just a slogan. And that projects weakness. If you just let that keep happening and never respond, then you are exactly the same thing that Dave is saying is going to happen, but not in the way he envisions. You're going to lose the United States.
Dave Smith, your answer to Iran deserves it.
We're gonna lose the United States. You're telling me that militarily Iran is going to take out the United States of America? The idea is so preposterous. This is a country that does not have an air force capable of delivering weapons to us. We're the most powerful country in the history of the world, and this is a puny third world country. Although, compared to the other puny third world countries we've been picking on, they're much, much tougher. But just think about this, man. Everybody, the war fever and the drums are beating. Let calmer heads prevail for a second. I just told you that after 9/11, the war-hungry George W. Bush put Iran on the list of axis of evil and then invaded and destroyed their 2 next-door neighboring countries. And your response was, the kids yell some chants? Therefore, they're threatening us. I mean, let's get real here, guys.
Well, I want to talk about that threat real quick, Dave Smith, because we saw the House chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee say in an interview recently that however we confront Iran today, it is at least confronting an Iran without a nuclear weapon. And as messy and as bad as all those rough outcomes you described, the argument just that I'm presenting to you is, well, we eventually have to confront Iran, so better to do it now than later. Your response, and then we'll go to Mr. Spencer.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. And like I said, all of the intelligence indicates that they're not trying to get a nuclear weapon anyway. So this is all like it's all just begging the question. It's like you have to like demonstrate that they are actually attempting to get a nuclear weapon before you can just make that call. But as the great Scott Horton said the other day, Truman did not start a war with the Soviets because they were developing a nuke, and Johnson didn't start a war with the Chinese communists because they were developing a nuke. And this idea that therefore it's okay to just launch a war of aggression because somebody else is developing a nuke. And the wildest thing about it, Matt, as you know, as everybody listening, I imagine knows, there is one country in the Middle East who has secretly developed nuclear weapons and is not a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that's Israel. I mean, the nerve of them to launch a war on these grounds. Iran is in the Non-Proliferation Treaty and is not developing nuclear weapons and doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel does and lies to the world about it. And this is their justification for launching a war that they want to drag America into? I mean, wake up, people.
Robert, is it hypocritical for Israel to try to draw America into a war over a secret nuclear weapons program when Israel has a secret nuclear weapons program?
No, it certainly isn't. But we got to cover some other issues here, Dave. You know, you're setting up some very big straw men when I list the several, but not all, of the attacks by the Islamic Republic of Iran on the United States, and you respond by saying, "And you say because some kids
No. On the United States,
that we should attack them." Well,
No. I want to get
States?
Dave's answer to that, because that was an argument. Here's how the argument is often presented. When has appeasement ever worked at deterring Iran? Robert laid out a series of aggressive actions from Iran. They're all accurate, by the way. So when has appeasement ever made them more conciliatory? Because we've tried appeasement a few times, and those events have occurred nonetheless.
Well, yeah, but what events are we even talking about here? Like, I'd highly encourage people to go through and read Enough Already by Scott Horton, where he goes through in details with all the sources and footnotes there. You can look through them for yourself, as I have, that so many of the accusations of Iran developing those roadside bombs during the insurgency in Iraq were complete nonsense. They were lies, just like all the other lies.
What about
told
the
during
launches
that
on
war.
our bases that Robert mentioned?
The launch. What specific attack are you talking about?
In northern Iraq, we had an American contractor killed. We've had Americans wounded severely because of
right. So again, though, it's like you frame this as attacking the United States of America, when in reality, what you're talking about is the United States of America illegally, aggressively invading their neighboring country, handing half the country to them and their influence. Huh?
I mean, Iran also invaded Iraq, so they can't exactly get it.
Saddam Hussein started that war, and the U.S. backed him.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, that was a war of great tragedy. I guess I'll allow Robert to get in here, and Robert, is there a point you want to make about these events being insufficiently linked to the decisions of the Iranian regime?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean, these events being insufficient?
Well, you list out all these things that you say Iran was involved in. We know that a lot of those were carried out through Iranian proxy forces. I think the point Dave is making is that
proxy forces. No, see, but this is the thing, Matt. They say if any Shiite with a rifle shoots anyone, that counts as someone that Iran attacked America, and it's just nonsense. We don't hold this standard. We don't hold this standard with anybody else. We don't say that, like, if America sold weapons to some group, that then they're our proxy now, and if they attack someone else with those weapons, that's America attacking them. Yes, we invaded Iraq and we overthrew the government, which was the minority of the country, right? There was a Sunni minority with a Shiite majority. We overthrew the government and forced democracy on them, and then a civil war broke out. And yes, Shiites with guns were shooting at our guys.
Robert, your response.
This is not a matter of some Shiite with a rifle and we say, oh, it's an Iranian proxy. Hamas is a Sunni group, as a matter of fact, but it's funded, 93% of its funding, $350 million, comes from the Islamic Republic of Iran. Hezbollah was created by the Islamic Republic of Iran. For more than 20 years, Bashar al-Assad was a client who depended upon the Shiite clergy in Iran to certify that the Alawites were bona fide Muslims so that he could stay in power in Syria. He was totally beholden as a result to the Iranian regime. He was a client of the Iranian regime. And, you also say, well, the IEAA said that they're not getting nuclear weapons. As a matter of fact, in a May 31st, 2025 report, which is almost 3 weeks ago. Oh, this must be outdated. Iran has significantly increased production and accumulation of highly enriched uranium, the only non-nuclear weapon state to produce such nuclear material. This is a matter of serious concern. And the IAEA also said that they've accumulated 881 pounds of uranium enriched to 60%, which far exceeds what is needed for civilian energy production and is close to weapons grade material. So you've got
I don't know. Go read and now read the conclusion. Now read the conclusion of the latest report. Read it. Read the whole thing. You want to read it right now on the air? Let's read the conclusion.
The conclusion takes back that they're enriching uranium at 60%? Come on.
No. See, this is how they're selling this lie, Matt. Yes, nobody's arguing that they're enriching at 60%. They've gone up to the level of having a latent nuclear deterrent. They are not the first country who's ever done this. And yes, that is true. It is higher than what they need for their civilian energy need. And
well, hold on. Do you believe, Dave, that enrichment to that degree ought to be deterred or allowed?
Listen, I think, again, these questions are... I don't like the spread of nuclear weapons at all. And I don't, should they be deterred? I think there would be a great way to deter them by making a deal. I think that would be very possible. I think the Iranians have demonstrated that they want to make a deal. Donald Trump seemed to be signaling he wanted to make a deal. It's kind of unclear now what his true intent was. But then they threw in the idea that you have to get rid of all your centrifuges and all your uranium. And the Iranians weren't going to go along with that. And so, yeah, I think a reasonable deal could be struck here where Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons. But even if they had them, that doesn't mean we should launch a regime change war there now. This is just madness. There's no concrete plan. You have no plan for who the new leader is going to be. You have no plan how to avoid it.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But I want to stay on the nuclear development real quick. Robert, you said in your opening statement, I wrote down the words precisely, that Iran was working on nuclear weapons. And that struck me as a broad statement. So I want to pin this down. How close does a country have to be, a hostile country, to nuclear weapons and their ambitions or their hopes or their works, to justify a regime change war?
Well, look, Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, president of Iran from 1989 to 1997. December 2001, he says that if a day comes when the world of Islam is duly equipped with the arms that Israel has in possession, which of course he was referring to a nuke, then the application of an atomic bomb would not leave anything in Israel, but the same thing would just produce damages in the Muslim world. So Rafsanjani was saying, we can destroy Israel completely, and retaliatory fire would only harm us to a certain extent, but not completely. So he was obviously thinking about an aggressive war of destruction of Israel. As Khamenei said on May 17th, a month ago, the Zionist regime, which is the dangerous and lethal cancerous tumor of this region, must undoubtedly be removed, and it will be. This cancerous tumor language is a recurring theme in Iranian rhetoric. It goes back to Khomeini.
So is that rhetoric sufficient? Are you taking the position in this debate that one's rhetoric can rise to a point around destruction and nuclear annihilation to justify a regime change war? Or do there have to be other actions that bring you there?
There have to be other actions, and there are. We have the enrichment of uranium beyond the need for, but beyond what is needed for civilian purposes. So you already have.
So is that it? Is that the answer? Once a country starts enriching uranium beyond civilian purposes, if they're a hostile country, that justifies regime change?
Well, Matt, that you didn't get my whole statement, because I didn't say we should go in. We should enable Israel in any way that they need. And if a regime change happens, we should support it. The Crown Prince, this is a very different situation from Iraq and Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, it was a total mess from the beginning. It was wrongly conceived, wrongly executed, wrongly concluded. I wrote a book about it, Who Lost Afghanistan? In Iran, it's a very different situation, because you've got people who remember growing up in a secular Western-style republic. They remember life outside an Islamic regime. I was 17 when the Islamic Revolution happened. There are plenty of people who are my age in Iran and who have told their kids about what life was like before the Islamic Revolution. And these people have a leader The Crown Prince is ready. He is offered to come in and be a caretaker ruler and establish a constitutional republic or whatever the Iranian people decide. There was nobody like that in Iraq.
What do you think the odds are of a constitutional republic emerging in Iran? Do you think they're better than 50%? Robert?
Well, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, and I'll go to Dave with the same question. We're going to ask this question. What do you think the percentage chance is that a constitutional republic emerges out of regime change in Iran? Give a number percentage to that, Robert.
Probably 30 or 40, because...
Well, I want Dave's response, too. You laid out the argument. Dave
Look,
Smith?
You've got just the opposite situation from Saddam Hussein and the toppling of Saddam, because Saddam was already a secular ruler. And there were a lot of people who thought he is not legitimate because he doesn't rule by Islamic law. And when he was toppled, then they saw their chance and they established ISIS and implemented Islamic law in the Sunni regions. And in Iran, it's just the opposite. Did you know that there was a survey a couple years ago of the Iranian people who were supposed to be 99% Muslim?
Yeah, okay, we're going to get, hold on, we're going to get to where the Iranian people are in a moment.
Only 40
hold on. But before we get to the Iranian people, I want to get to this notion of what the government looks like. You've presented this concept that there is a crown prince ready to come in and rule the country, and you say 30, 40% that would go well. Dave Smith, I'm guessing you don't agree.
Yeah, I mean, look, let me just say, I just want to respond to a couple of things there, and then I will answer that, whatever percentage I would give it. First of all, again, just going to this, like the idea that you're even going to say the chance or the rhetoric. I mean, how many American politicians have said like the craziest things, including John McCain and Hillary Clinton talking about wiping Iran off the face of the map herself, right? I forget her exact words, but it was something like that. John McCain constantly saying it. Donald Trump in tweets and in all types of bravado talk has made all types of comments about violence like you've never seen before. But nobody takes that as a serious policy. Like we really just, you know what I'm saying? Like nobody takes that as a serious policy until the other night when he tweeted for everyone to evacuate Tehran. Now that's like a real type threat. But for us to even be talking about like they holler this or they chant that is just completely beside the point. Again, this is weapons of mass destruction all over again. All the intelligence says they don't have a bomb. That our own CIA said that since 2007, they've made the political decision not to acquire a bomb. We just got that reaffirmed with more intelligence last week. There was another report that said the same thing. So that's number one. After this, look, I'll concede this. I don't know, by the way, exactly what the percentage would be. My gut instinct is it's much, much lower than that. And I do find it to be such an unbelievable insult. I just can't even believe we're having this debate, that we start the terror war to get Al-Qaeda, and then it turns into spread democracy. And at this point in it, Matt, 25 years later, you understand, we got to support the Al-Qaeda guy who just took over Syria, and now we got to spread monarchy to Iran. It's just such an insult to the intelligence of the American people. But I will say this, I'll maybe meet you in the middle here, and I think maybe we could have some agreement on this area. I will grant you that perhaps it is true what you're saying, and some of the other hawks say as well, that Iran is a better candidate for regime change. Perhaps the odds are a little higher that it would work out than it would in Iraq. I'd probably put the odds at like, say, 1% in Iraq and like 5% here, but whatever, let's say the odds are higher. The flip side to that is that Iran is also tougher. This is a country 3 times the size of Iraq. This is a government who has maintained power and much more tight control over their country. They're a bigger economy. They have a much more sophisticated military. They have an ability. Look, even what we've just seen in Israel already. See, we're used to picking on real puny third world countries, so we're not used to this. But they just hit Israel back and killed some people there. Now, I don't know how much they have in the tank, but they certainly at least have a little bit more than this, and they can touch perhaps us or Israel. And then the other thing is the terrain there is much harder to fight on. And then the other thing is that if your percentage doesn't work out and one of these maniacs seizes control of the government, and it's a much worse situation than that, you got to consider the potential that we're getting dragged into something catastrophic here that's going to cost another $2 trillion and get another 500,000 people killed. And so I don't know, do you guys after the last 25 years not have any sense of concern about this, of taking this risk?
Let me posit the argument,
chance.
Dave.
You made it a 40% chance.
Yeah, hold on, Dave. Dave, I want to push back on this because I've heard this argument as well. Well, us striking Iran doesn't really bring us to that level of entanglement and involvement that mirrors Iraq or Afghanistan or even Libya. This can be more akin to the Soleimani strike. A lot of the people I like and listen to, like Rand Paul, were critical of the Soleimani strike, but it didn't drag us into extended conflict with Iran. It reset deterrence and everyone rolled on their way for a few years. Do you think, Dave Smith, that there's any validity to the argument that this can be a kind of one and done, go strike some nuclear facilities, fly home, and then hope that it doesn't go beyond that?
Well, I certainly hope so. And I certainly hope Donald Trump, President Trump, comes to his senses and you know what I mean, pulls back from this. I think that hopefully at this point he still could do that. I don't see any signal that that is the case. And I think that we should be honest with ourselves and make no mistake about this, that this is a regime change war already, and that has been Israel's goal here the entire time. They've admitted it in their own words over and over and over again. Netanyahu has testified before Congress and urged us to go overthrow the government in Iran. This is their goal. They know that they don't have nuclear weapons. This is all the culmination of the clean break strategy. General Wesley Clark told us there were 7 countries they wanted to take out, and this is the 7th one. They're going in to take this country out. Like, I don't know how anybody can even argue with this at this point. And so that's why the argument here is, what are we getting ourselves into, and how risky is another regime change war for a country that poses absolutely no threat to us? This is a country that again, there is no need for us to do this. This is a complete and obvious war of aggression by Israel with American assistance, and a war of choice. We simply don't have to. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu has been telling me since I was 7 years old that Iran is 1 to 3 years away. Hey guys, do you think he got it wrong when he said that for the last 30 plus years? Or was he lying? Or was he lying so that America would go overthrow the government he wants overthrown?
I think we have some of that. I'd like to get Robert's response to some of those claims by the current prime minister, who had been in and out of Israel's government for quite some time. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
At JM Bullion, excellent service and competitive pricing aren't just goals, they're our standard. Our commitment to customer discretion and privacy with secure and confidential transactions has earned us an unparalleled reputation as an online retailer of precious metals, backed by over 375,000 reviews, averaging 4.8 out of 5 stars. Only at JM Bullion.
You're joining us in the Zero Hedge debates. We're here with Robert Spencer, director of Jihad Watch, and Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem. So the question to you, Robert, does the Prime Minister have any credibility?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the fact is that it's not just either he's right and obviously he was wrong, or he's lying. There's a third choice. And the third choice revolves around the fact that there have been numerous strange, mysterious accidents that befell Iranian nuclear scientists, computer foul-ups in Iranian nuclear facilities. A lot of this has been blamed on Mossad. Mossad, of course, has not taken any explicit credit for it, but it is altogether possible that the Iranian nuclear adventure has been stymied at several points by the Israelis, and that is why the
Why not just keep doing that? Instead of a regime change war, why don't we just keep doing those things? Those sound great.
That would be great. If that it can be handled that way, then I'm all for it.
I don't understand.
Straw men, because I'm not talking about both boots on the ground. Some
Dude,
sort
this
of
is
yeah, it's a straw man to say.
Okay, this is the most dishonest.
This to Iran, because that is not what I'm arguing, and that is not. There is no reason.
Yes, no, I'm not saying.
Hold on,
I
Dave.
understand.
Hold on, Dave.
Sorry.
Necessary at this point.
Yeah, I want to clarify your argument, Robert. You're saying that you're not advocating the position that we ought to deploy troops to the streets of Tehran today, but are you sensitive to the argument that our involvement in Syria, where a lot of Americans were mangled, killed, that began with 40 military advisors? Do you worry about America's history of slow walking or sleepwalking into some of these wars?
Yeah, except for one thing, and that is that Trump is aware of this. Trump, for all the rhetoric that's been going on the last few days, is not George W. Bush. Lessons have been learned from Iraq and Afghanistan. Remember his devastating exchange with Jeb Bush back in 2015, I guess it was. And the fact is that Trump has been consistent all through these years of saying he's not going to allow Iran to get nukes, while at the same time rightly excoriating the Bush administration and Obama as well for engaging in this pointless and fruitless mission creep and nation building. And so why is it impossible to believe that he intends to take out Iran's nuclear program, or is willing to do so if it comes to that? But that does not mean that he's going to go in with some Bushian adventure and try to give democracy to the Iranians.
Well, Robert, how do we stop Israel from a decapitation campaign if we're bombing nuclear facilities? What's the leverage we have over them at that point?
Well, okay, if Israel undertakes a decapitation campaign, you've also got to reckon with the possibility that the Iranian people might undertake a decapitation campaign. You know that it was several years ago now, as a matter of fact, a full soccer stadium, looks like 50, 70,000 people in Iran was chanting, "Long live Reza Shah," who was the father of the deposed Shah of Iran. He was the Shah in the 1930s. And that kind of open defiance of the Islamic regime and disgust with the Islamic regime also combined with the fact that, as I was trying to say before, that so many Iranians, where it's officially 90% Shiite Muslim and 95 to 99% Muslim in general, and actually only 40% of Iranians now identify as Muslims, is an indication of the deep disgust that the Iranian people themselves have for this regime. There was nothing like that in Iraq or Afghanistan. And both of those were wrong-headed and stupid from the beginning. This is a very different situation with a very different president. And the idea that he's just going to blunder into making all the same mistakes that George W. Bush, who he knows was a fool and has said was a fool, made, there's just no reason to assume that.
I certainly hope so. There is the argument that we've heard in other campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq that we would be greeted as liberators. And it seems Robert's making that argument now. Dave Smith, do you see any challenges with that?
Well, let me just, I got to respond to a bunch of this stuff, but yeah, of course, there's a million challenges with that. But number one, I wasn't strawmanning your position. I didn't claim that your position is to send boots on the ground. That's what a straw man would be. What I said is that your position has an unacceptable risk of being dragged into a situation where we have boots on the ground. So it's not a straw man of your issue, but I just can't believe, like, the hardest pivot I ever saw in my life from you watching that video of Netanyahu to basically saying a couple scientists dropped dead, and so I could imagine a world where they would have had nuclear weapons. He said with certainty, they're 6 months away from being at 90%, just bold-faced lies. And then, by the way, I mean, just Matt, as basic human beings watching this here, you're telling me that by the 19th time you've gotten it wrong, you don't go, now granted, I have been wrong about this 18 times in a row, but no, with certainty, he says they're 6 months away. And every honest human being knows he was lying to try to lure America into a regime change that he wanted. And why on earth should we do it? On behalf of it, it's just so crazy. I just couldn't believe that you completely got away from that. It's like right there in front of you. The lies are being told. It's the same thing over and over again. I'm sorry, what question did you want me to answer, Matt?
Well, I think you got somewhere around there. I'm going to ask you this question. Some say that the modern nature of warfare, Dave, is such that everyone kind of has their proxy forces, right? A lot of the Sunni monarchies had their proxy forces in ISIS. We've heard Robert talk about Iran's proxy forces. And so sometimes the neocons make this argument. Well, America needs a proxy force, and we've been paying for Israel for so long. Why not just use Israel to do America's dirty work and give us plausible deniability? They get the return rockets instead of us. Actually, America first would mean giving Israel the weapons so that they could execute this campaign with great effectiveness.
Well, it's not a war that's in America's interest. So I don't see what and I believe we've had plenty of proxies. I mean, half the world is American sock puppets. We prop up Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Egypt and Israel. And I mean, it's the common theme amongst the countries that people are always advocating regime change against is that they're the few ones that aren't American sock puppets. So I don't even know what people are talking about, man. And this whole thing, this whole experiment of America being super involved in the Middle East, it's like I can't even believe people can argue for this anymore. What has it brought us? It's bankrupted the country. We got thousands of our bravest young boys who have been killed, tens of thousands of them who have been maimed and injured, tens more thousands who have blown their brains out in the aftermath of these wars. And we're sitting here talking about, again, whether we're going to launch an illegal, aggressive war of choice or help the Israelis launch an illegal, aggressive war of choice. This is, I don't know, this is absolute madness. We don't need to do this. And if you want to look there and say, look, the argument that, well, Donald Trump said some good stuff about it back then, so there. It's like, yeah, Donald Trump just demanded a complete surrender, dude. I don't know. It's not looking like he's pursuing that policy, and I think we should be trying to do everything in our power to urge him to get back to his previous position. By the way, that was kind of my point when I said that he was betraying MAGA. Whatever MAGA means to you, the point is that he's gotten away from that great stuff he was saying, and now he's demanding a complete surrender. Sir, you demand complete surrenders from nations you are at war with. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I want to talk about the cost of that war with Robert. One of the things that has given a lot of millennials resentment over the regime change wars in the Middle East of yesteryear is the cost. And so I wondered if you'd given any thought to, like, what's an amount of money that is worth it to the American taxpayer to cause a regime change in Iraq? I'm sorry,
Well,
Iran.
there's no doubt that this is a big thing that has been not paid sufficient attention to. The fact is that Osama bin Laden actually launched the 9/11 attacks in order to cripple America economically. And that was why he chose the target of the World Trade Center, thinking that it was the center of the economic activity of the United States. And so there's no doubt that he had tremendous success with this. And the American economy has suffered tremendously in all kinds of ways from the war on terror, so-called, which was wrongly conceived and wrongly pursued from the beginning. But on the other hand, you have to balance economic considerations against considerations of survival. And Dave was saying, are we going to go to war for Israel because Netanyahu wants us to go to war? Even if Netanyahu and Israel didn't exist, you have a regime that, as I showed earlier, has repeatedly attacked the United States, is on a war footing with the United States, has been since 1979, has incredibly hostile stances toward American policies, has kidnapped Americans, tortured Americans, killed Americans. Meanwhile, the rhetoric, yes, is frankly about destroying America. And this is something that the Iranians—
But how much money, Robert? Is it worth $1 trillion?
To assassinate Trump, and so
we got it. We've heard. No. We've heard you lay out the list of criticisms. The question is, what is it worth financially to you?
Well, survival is worth a lot to me. Yeah.
Do you think that toppling the Iranian regime is necessary for American survival?
If they attack, if they have a nuclear weapon and they are attacking Americans—
But just as you find them now, as you find them today, however that is, do you think it's worth $1 trillion in U.S. spending to change the regime there?
To change, you mean just like willy-nilly out of the blue with them just minding their own business? That's not the situation that we're in.
Well, no, I didn't say that. I said in the situation you find it now, not an idyllic situation or not a catastrophic situation.
I do not think that the United States should act right now to either attack Iran or change the regime in Iran. If Israel acts, we should support them.
With
At
how
the
much
same
money?
Iran could well attack. And if Iran attacks, we should be prepared to defend ourselves.
Is there any limit on the amount of money, resources, or material you would give Israel in this battle?
Well, the money is very bad because the people in Washington behave as if the money never runs out. And so I'm not really in favor of giving out money in general. But when you are coming to issues of survival of the United States, then you're going to have to shell out. At the same time, we have tremendous economic problems in the United States that I believe ought to be addressed, and foreign aid ought to be stopped.
Sure. So
are you actually making the argument that this is a war of our survival, that we won't survive if Israel doesn't overthrow the Iranian government?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
So how is this a war of survival for us?
If they attack the United States, it's a very different situation.
Can I just say, when you say attack the United States,
is imminent.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, just like a clarifying question. I just want to ask you a clarifying question because I just don't. When you say the United States of America, we might be talking about different things. Like I'm talking about the geographic area between Mexico and Canada, like the middle section of North America. When you say they've attacked the United States of America, when has Iran attacked the United States of America?
Well, if you limit it to that, then you can talk about the assassination attempt on Masih Alinejad, the Iranian dissident in New York a few years back. You can talk about the attack on the, I believe it was a Saudi diplomat in a restaurant in Washington a few years before that. You can talk about...
they made claims. Did they ever even demonstrate that was Iran?
What's that?
That is such nonsense, dude. There is no proof that Iran was trying. You're telling me Iran was trying to assassinate Donald Trump? Matt Gaetz, you know the man, okay? You're telling me Donald Trump, they tried to assassinate him, and Donald Trump's response was to negotiate? His response was to negotiate with the...
I'm going to say this. Manhattan federal prosecutors in November 2024 charged Farhad Shakeri with plotting to kill Trump before the election at the behest of the Iranian government and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. They ordered an operative to assassinate Trump. His name is Farhad Shakeri. You can look him up. He's been charged. I don't think Manhattan federal
absolutely no proof.
Robert,
absolutely no proof.
Did we also have sort of a revenge plot in the Iraq War on an assassination attempt? As I recall, there was this belief that an individual had motivated an assassination attempt against George H.W. Bush, and that was something that inspired his son.
That was Saddam, right? Saddam was supposed to have done that, and so W wanted to do it. But this, because W...
Is that similar to you?
That he's Trump once again. Okay. And so, look, also, there have been the fact that the Iranian leadership has said that they want to assassinate Trump. Not Spencer, not Benjamin Netanyahu, but the Amir Ali Hajizadeh, who was the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps Aerospace Force, 2023, says, Allah willing, we're looking to kill Trump and Pompeo, and military commanders who issued the order to kill Soleimani should be killed. Ahl Bayt News Agency, January 23rd, 2021. The Supreme Leader's website posted a photo montage of Trump playing golf under the shadow of a drone with calls to avenge the death of Soleimani.
Okay,
so sir, how are you possibly not advocating that we declare war on Iran right now? How is Donald Trump such a wimp that his response to this, they're trying to murder him, and his response was to negotiate? So how you should support America declaring war on Iran right now. Everybody should. They tried to murder the president, right?
I don't buy it. Because the fact is that Trump is a man who makes deals. He's for all the talk about him being a narcissistic egomaniac or whatever, he is actually extremely pragmatic and
all right, hold on. Let me get in here for just a moment. Gentlemen.
So he understands there are more important considerations at play here. If he can pacify this situation with the deal, he's willing to do it. But I saw the video of Trump being killed by the drone that the Supreme Leader posted. You can't tell me it was fabricated. It was right there on his own channel.
We are out of time. We are out of time, but I do want to get a final word from each of you. I'm going to give you each about a 1 minute closing statement. We'll begin with Dave Smith.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I was getting at there, Iran has never attacked the United States of America. And this is just like 2003 all over again. All this war propaganda. I get all these lies will fade away. Every single war starts this way. You remember at the beginning of the Ukraine war when there was the ghost of Kiev and the war was going to be fought with sanctions alone and that was going to drive the Russians out. You remember how the Afghan army was going to hold the country together. They told us that for 20 years. You remember when the surge was going to work in 2007 and Dick Cheney said the insurgency is in its final throes, and then it just went on for years and years and years, and hundreds of thousands of more people died. You remember when they said mission accomplished? You remember when they said they had weapons of mass destruction? It's all the same thing again. This is so naked right in front of all of us. We are choosing to engage in another aggressive war of choice to overthrow another regime in the Middle East. That's what's going on right now, and it is absolute madness for anybody to support this. It is just the last thing that the United States of America needs. And all of this hyperbole about how we will be finished is absurd.
Robert Spencer, your final word.
Yeah, once again, this is a straw man because this is not what I'm saying. I'm not in favor of a war of choice for regime change in the Middle East. I'm saying that Iran poses a very real threat. It is a nuclear threat. This is abundantly documented by the IAEA and others. The foreign minister of France recently was talking about how Iran poses an imminent threat. He doesn't have any reason to be in the pocket of Israel. As a matter of fact, the French government under Macron has been quite hostile to Israel. And so the idea that this is some kind of war for Israel and a repeat of 2003 is completely out of focus. Trump, above all, has learned the lessons of 2003 and the drastic mistakes of Iraq and Afghanistan. We're not talking about boots on the ground. If regime change does come in Iran, it's most likely to come from the Iranian people themselves. And we should be supporting them wholeheartedly in every way that we possibly can.
Robert Spencer is the director of Jihad Watch. Dave Smith is host of Part of the Problem podcast. ZeroHedge puts on these debates as their ZeroHedge debates. I'm Matt Gaetz, host of the Matt Gaetz Show on One America News. Thank you all for joining us. Now, a word about our sponsors.
Now is the time to take advantage of the power of gold and silver to grow your wealth, whether you're an experienced investor or new to the game. These precious metals have a long history of being a safe haven for your savings, but they also offer growth potential, making them a wise investment choice. So where does the average investor go to buy gold and silver? That's easy. JM Bullion. JM Bullion is one of the most popular and most trusted precious metals retailers in the nation. We offer a huge selection of gold, silver, platinum, and palladium products that can be delivered to your door in safe, discreet, fully insured packaging. From 1 gram of gold to an entire mint box of silver, JM Bullion offers precious metals to suit every financial goal and budget. No matter your budget, now is the time to start investing in precious metals and start protecting yourself and your savings against these volatile markets. Visit jmbullion.com today to take a look at our wide variety of precious metals, rounds, coins, and bars, and find out how you can turn your savings into gold.